couple of weeks ago, Donald Trump's son, Don Jr., tweeted in response to the media saying, "Oh, isn't wonderful, the Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg," I think that's how you pronounce his name, "he's the first openly homosexual member of the cabinet. Yay!" Because obviously that's good to have someone on the cabinet that does a sexual practice. And Don Jr. is like, "No, Donald Trump had one first. Did you forget this guy?" I guess some other homosexual. And I replied to him, I said, this is why conservatives, or modern conservatives, they always lose. They just always follow the left as a shadow. And I don't mean to pick on Donald Trump Jr., but this is most the Republican Party, and I would say most conservatives. In many ways, this could be one of my more radical videos in trying to explain really what it means to be on the right. Because people really don't know. They think on the right in America means, well, we love Israel, we want to give them money, we want to cut taxes, and we love our military, and we like to fly the flag, and democracy and liberty and freedom. That's, I think, what most people, when they think of the right, and the left are like socialist or communist or something like that. But see, that's all wrong. That is really totally wrong, our concept of really what the right is. It's really, everything changed after the French Revolution in 1789, so much so that even supposed right-wingers, they really adopt the premise of the left. And the premise is of equality, of democracy, and of freedom, their type of individual freedom. And the right buys into that. We hear about the sacred democracy and our freedoms and how we believe in equality. All men are created equal. And that's the Republican Party. And that's the Democrat Party. And they're all really going in the same direction. And what's interesting is sort of like the conservatives are like a man that steps off a tall building and you start to fall and you're accelerating as you fall. But when you get to like the first floor, you're like, oh, I went off now. I didn't want to go any further, but you can't stop it. You keep going and you go faster and faster towards the ground to the crash. You're going to splat. There's nothing you can do about it. And it accelerates. It's Newton's law of gravity. As you fall, you accelerate. And that's what's happening politically, and we're seeing it now. That's why everything seems to be accelerating. How the infection got in our minds was this whole idea of liberalism, which is a rejection of tradition. The idea of equality, freedom, democracy, that got in there. And then from liberalism, you had democracy. At first it was limited, only certain people could vote, but people could vote. And then the franchise expanded more and more, where, first you had to be property owners. Then, no, all men could vote of over a certain age. Then it's like, we should allow women too. Then, how about people of other races and other nations? And now they're talking, hey, even if you're not even a citizen of this nation, you should be allowed to vote. And how about children? They should vote too. See, it keeps expanding. That's the nature of it. And the whole idea, we keep going further and further down. So you go to democracy, and then we have democracy. People naturally want to socialize because they realize they want other people's stuff. And if you have a democracy, you can vote on it. And if it's a sacred democracy, if someone votes to take your stuff, well, you don't want to be opposed to democracy, do you? So that's what happens. And then after democracy, it gets into full-blown communism and then totalitarianism. That's the end result is slavery. That's what happens with these whole ideas, and we're rushing down the path. So as a conservative, and if you're really going to be what I am, a revolutionary conservative, or you could call me a reactionary, you got to reject everything that came out of the French Revolution, all that type of thinking. And I know that's shocking for most people even to get their minds around, but that's what we have to do if we're on the right. Because if we're going to buy into the premise of the left, we're just always going to be following them. And that's what happens, and that's what we see happening. It's whatever the left does, or what they call the progressive, because it's progressing. People on the right, they're like, that's a little too far. I mean, we kind of agree with this, but maybe it's a little too far. And as we saw with this Don Jr., for some reason thinking announcing homosexuals in the cabinet is some conservative value. That is to be expected. So now let me explain these three categories and why I think they're nonsense. The three categories: equality, democracy, and freedom. First of all, equality is probably the most evil concept that has come around. I don't know how many millions of people have died because of the concept of equality. There is no equality. I was talking to a friend today, and I said, I can even understand flat earthers. That's a stupid thing, but I could understand maybe if you're really dumb and you don't think about things, that you think the earth is flat. But to think that everyone is equal, you got to be really stupid. Even more stupid than flat earthers. You can just look around. Obviously, people aren't equal. In fact, you can't have equality and diversity. People always say they love diversity, but diversity means people are different. And if people are different, by definition, they're not equal. The only way we could literally have equality is eliminate gender, so you don't have male or female. We're all the same sexless being. Eliminate race, so we're all this mixed race, who knows what. Eliminate status and ability, so we all have the same ability, and if someone is better, we have to bring them down to try to get this formless mass of people. That's the only way you could get to equality, and even then you wouldn't get to it. But that seems to be the goal, is to just try to merge everyone together and get rid of all differences, which I would think is a horrible world. I like differences. I like that girls look different than me. I enjoy that. I like the diversity. I like that we're not exactly the same. I think differences are good. But if you have differences, you're not going to have equality. So equality is a stupid concept. But it gets us in problems because everyone, at least on the left, they assume all mankind is equal, or womankind are equal. And if there's any discrepancies, it's got to be due to hate. I guess some mysterious emotion. And for example, if you have more men in science, it can't be because men maybe biologically have a different interest in science than women. No. It's got to be because of the patriarchy repressing women. Because if it wasn't for oppression, we know men and women would be exactly equal in all aspects. And you could do this with race, you could do this with age, you can do this with anything. And it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous concept. There is no equality. We're all different. And the left have this idea of hyper-individualism, where we're just individuals. But on the right, we look at ourselves as not individuals, but as people, persons, meaning we're not just the base matter. And that's why the left, they always like to make this argument like, well, we all bleed red. Yeah, well, pigs bleed red. So do dogs. What does that mean? That's just sort of the most base attribute of being a human being. Yeah, all human beings, we share certain fundamental characteristics, but the important characteristics, the things that make me different from you or make a beautiful woman different than me, those are the important things. And they can be the spiritual, they could be intellectual, emotional, how serious-minded someone is, how funny they are. Those are the qualities that make us different. And again, differences are a good thing, and we should cherish those differences. But you can't have equality. There's just no way. It's a stupid concept. And when you try to enforce equality, it's a horrible situation, because the only way you can do this is through outside controls that just go down to the lowest common denominator. So instead of trying to bring everyone up, it tries to pull everyone down. And if I can use an example, you have statues. They're made of stone. And you see, you have a beautiful statue of David or Venus, and then you have like this big ugly statue, and then you just have this block of rock that's made out of stone. Well, you could say they're all made of stone, so they're all the same, right? They're all made of the same stone. Well, no, they have different attributes, and the attributes are the important thing. That's the key thing. And that's the same with people. So saying that we all have the same blood or something like that, we all bleed red, that's not really the important attributes. The attributes are what we need to focus on, and we're not the same. We're different. There isn't equality. There can never be equality. The only way you could have equality logically is through death. Like you kill everyone, then we'd all be equal. And that's why I say the left is kind of a death cult, because they end up doing that. They end up killing millions of people, trying to make everyone the same, and it doesn't really work. So that gets me into the next topic, which is democracy. Okay, we already seen equality is stupid. It can't exist. It's a myth. And if you try to implement equality, it's bloody. In fact, many bloody dictators have tried to implement it. Khmer Rouge, Stalin, the list goes on. It's always a mess when they try to implement equality. But then you have democracy. And democracy is this idea somehow that anyone that's vaguely humanoid should be able to decide how you should live. What's up with that? Why should you do that? We're not equal. So why should unequal people have the same power to determine how you live? And that's so offensive. It is so a lack of justice. But that's logically what democracy is. And forget about gender or race, even within the same race. So let's say we're talking about white men. Why should, like, a white guy that's a meth head that's vomiting right now in the gutter, he throws his trash everywhere, he doesn't wear a shirt, he's tatted up, he's a fuck up, why should he have the same vote as someone that's a doctor, that has studied, that cares about society, that is educated, that maybe has a family and property? Why should they have the same power? They shouldn't. It's an absurd situation to think they should have the equal amount of power in the vote. They shouldn't. Democracy is a horrible system, and it never stops at democracy. It always goes, to the socialism, communism, totalitarianism, as we're seeing. So this whole idea that this democracy is something that we need to venerate, I don't. I think democracy is horrible. Just like I think the idea of equality is horrible, democracy is horrible, and I don't support that. I think there are some natural functions in a society that are organic. If you have an organic society, you're going to have naturally some leaders, you're going to have some natural that are merchants, you're going to have some natural laborers. And what we need to emphasize that these differences are good, and people have different roles in the society, and people tend to be happier when they're fulfill the role, not when you try to make everyone the same as we do in a democracy. So again, if you go back before the French Revolution, you had the aristocracy. I think that was an important concept, and it wasn't evil, but no one supports that anymore. It's almost like you can't even imagine it. And I've been recently watching that series. I didn't watch it when it came out, but Downton Abbey is about the British aristocracy in the 1920s. But even the show had a lot of the propaganda, how the aristocracy is horrible, democracy is the wave of the future, socialism, and women get the vote, and this and that. We're all equal, and everyone needs to rise up. And there's no one that really opposes that idea. And I do, and a few people do. If you're really right-wing, you understand that is not a good thing. It really isn't a good thing to try to level everyone and to get rid of natural organic differences within the society. These differences are important, and they lead to happiness. Which gets to the last thing, is freedom. Most people think of freedom as freedom to do something versus freedom for something. And years ago, the Greeks had the concept of freedom for, meaning you have the freedom for finding the truth, a freedom for dignity, meaning you're able to rise up from your vices. It used to be considered the greatest freedom you had was not outside, but within yourself. If you're a slave to your vice, let's say pornography or liquor or drugs, you're not a free person. I was just reading the tweets of John McAfee. He was a multimillionaire. He did that virus software. It was crappy, but he's kind of an esoteric guy, a wild guy. He's slept with all these women, he said, thousands, and he's done all sorts of drugs. And he's in prison now for tax evasion. But he said even though he's in prison now, he's always been in prison really because of his vices. They've always like entangled him. So he was never a free man. And that's what we should encourage, is for people to be free in that sense. And to be free in that sense doesn't mean to give everyone the same degree of freedoms. And again, it gets back to the whole democracy idea. Why should the meth head have the same vote as a real responsible citizen? Same thing holds true of freedom. Why should the meth head have the same degree of freedom as someone that's a responsible person? They shouldn't. And we don't do this in a lot of cases, like children don't have the same freedom as adults because we know they're not able to make the same wise decisions. And in a good society, we understand there's certain people that they can't have a lot of freedoms to do whatever they want. And this has been a disaster. There used to be a lot of structures and control, and it was always considered kind of right-wing and oppressive, like, the lower class people that, no, you need to stay off drugs and alcohol, and no, you shouldn't really screw around until you're married, and oh, how oppressive and everything. But there was reasons for that, because when people do whatever they want, they end up vomiting over there in the gutter, and they're living a horrible life. They don't live with dignity. Their life has not improved. It's been decreased. It's been devalued. And this is what we're seeing now, I think, in all Western societies, because we're embracing the concepts of revolutionary France during that era of equality, democracy, freedom, but we don't understand how that we can't use these concepts indiscriminately. We got to look at the person. Not every person is the same, even the dignity of the person, not even the value of their lives. Some people's lives are worth more. We're not all the same. You could say in God's eyes we're all the same, fine, but in practical terms, person that's doing a great thing for society is more valuable than an idiot drug dealer that's breaking in homes. One life is a lot more valuable. So this idea that all lives matter, no, they don't. Lives have different values, and we need to understand that. And if you try to put everyone on the same value, you're just pulling everyone down. And what I hate to see what's really happening is everything starts to collapse. We go into the ruins where there's really no beauty. We try to tear down beauty because, again, if you have beauty, that means you could have something ugly. So we try to make everyone ugly. All women become obese and fat and ugly. We celebrate that, for example. And we try to put everyone down to a trashy standard. So people don't have manners. They don't call each other like Mr. Ramsey. People I don't even know call me Paul. And see, we level everything down to like the lowest class, so everyone lives like trash, and they're all living in a trashy society. What we need to do is have a vision of something greater, where we have a hierarchy and the people on the top help to bring people up. We don't try to bring everyone down. And our current system is a process of bringing everyone down to the lowest common denominator. I don't want that. I want to see beautiful things in life. I want to see people that do better than other people, that do great things, because we owe a debt to the people that are intelligent, that have a heroic ability about them. They're the ones that change the world and provide for people that are inferior. And the inferior people, they don't really add anything. What we need to do is help improve their lot. But instead of improving their lot, we're saying, no, everyone's exactly the same, everyone's equal, even though that's ridiculous. We can just see people are not equal. And I'm talking in the same race, same gender, they're not equal. But to maintain that fiction is so unjust, and it just lowers the quality and the standard of living for everyone in happiness. So my point is, if we're going to arise out of the ruins, and we're headed to ruins, in the future, we need to have a philosophy that is not based on the same mistake. And trying to reinvent, like, oh, let's have democracy, ooh, let's believe in equality, ooh, let's believe in freedom equally for everyone. No, it doesn't work, because we're seeing the results. It doesn't. And it's not right-wing, that's a left-wing position. So all the Republicans and all the mainstream talking heads, I'm sure they'll never say what I say. They'll just be repeating whatever the left says like a year ago. So what the left is saying now, the right will say, well, that's a little bit too wild. We agree with what you said last year. and everything starts to accelerate. Again, it's like stepping off the cliff. At first you fall slow, then you go faster, 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 and faster, and we go down, 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 and that's how we're headed, down, 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 faster, faster, and eventually it will splat. But out of the ruins, we got to develop a new system that is not based on these lies of equality. Equality doesn't exist. People are not equal. The lies of democracy, somehow that's a good system. That's an evil system. The lies of freedom, that everyone should have the same amount of freedom. That's a disaster, and it's cruel. Talk to you guys later.